In court, my dad pointed at me with the same finger he'd used to sign my college loan papers 12 years ago, papers he never helped me repay, and said to Judge Morrison, his golf buddy for 3 decades, "Your Honor, this boy manipulated a dying man for money." 23 people sat in that courtroom and not one of them was on my side. My brother Eric sat behind Dad's lawyer, nodding at every word. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Judge Morrison looked at me like I was something he'd just stepped in. I didn't yell. I didn't even try to defend myself. I just opened my briefcase, pulled out 3 handwritten letters and said, "Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit A." My voice didn't shake. The date on the first letter made the judge freeze. Dad's lawyer stopped grinning. And my father, for the first time in all my 37 years, went completely silent. Honestly, I should have seen it coming. The signs were always there, written across almost 4 decades of being the son they wished they'd never had. That morning started in my apartment downtown, up on the 28th floor. I bought that place with my own money. No help from anyone. You'd think the view would feel like success. Senior investment analyst at Thornton & Associates, 6-figure salary, partnership track. All of it. My name is Daniel Parker. Daniel James Parker. At 37, I built everything from scratch just like Grandpa taught me. Grandpa Frank Parker. He's the only one in my family who ever made me feel like I mattered. He died 3 months ago, a Tuesday morning in March. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. I was there, holding his hand in that cold hospice room, watching him take his last breath. Just me. Dad said he had a conference. Eric claimed he had a meeting. Mom said hospitals were too much for her. So I sat there for 6 hours, watching the man who raised me more than my own parents ever did slip away. His last words, "You were always the strong one, Danny. Don't let them take that from you." I didn't get it then. The funeral was small. Maybe 20 people, half of them Grandpa's poker buddies from the Veterans Hall. Dad gave the eulogy, talked about what a great father Frank had been, how he instilled values of hard work and family. I sat in the front row, biting my tongue, wanting to laugh. Dad hadn't visited Grandpa in 2 years. Not once. I drove 3 hours to Springfield every other weekend. I paid for hospice. I held his hand. After the service, Dad pulled me aside in the parking lot. "The lawyer wants to read the will next week," he said. "Tuesday at 2. Don't be late." "I'll be there," I told him. He looked at me, really looked at me, and there was something cold in his eyes I'd never seen before. "Good," he said. "This concerns all of us." The will reading happened in a conference room at Jacobson and Meyer, Grandpa's law firm for 40 years. Mr. Jacobson was retired, but he came back just for this. They'd known each other since they were kids. When I arrived, he shook my hand and held it a second too long. "Good to see you, son," he said. Dad and Eric already sat on one side of the table. Mom was next to Dad, her hand clinging to his arm. There was one empty chair opposite them. I took it. Mr. Jacobson cleared his throat and opened a folder. "Frank was very specific about his wishes," he said. "He revised this will 3 times in the last year, most recently in February, 6 weeks before he died. He was of sound mind, fully capable of making these decisions." Dad leaned forward. "We understand. Please proceed." Mr. Jacobson adjusted his glasses. "To my son Robert Parker, I leave my collection of war medals and military memorabilia, items he expressed interest in during my service." He paused. "To my grandson Eric Parker, I leave my 1967 Mustang fully restored, which he's admired since childhood." Eric grinned. Dad nodded. Then Jacobson continued, voice careful. "The remainder of my estate, including my home at 412 Maple Street, savings accounts, investment portfolio, and all financial assets totaling approximately $4.7 million, I leave entirely to my grandson, Daniel James Parker." You could hear a pin drop. Dad's face turned crimson. "What?" he blurted. "Additionally," Mr. Jacobson went on, "Frank specified that Daniel is to be the sole executor of the estate, with full discretion over all assets." "That's not possible," Dad snapped, jumping up. "My father wouldn't cut out his own son. Danny must have influenced him somehow." Dad was sick. He was on medication. "Robert," Jacobson's voice cut like a knife. Frank was completely lucid. "I have documentation from 3 different doctors confirming his mental competency for each revision. This will is ironclad." Now Mom was crying, real tears this time, not the show she put on at the funeral. Eric stared at me like I'd just robbed him. And Dad, my father, who barely spoke to me in 20 years unless he needed something, looked at me with pure hatred. "You manipulated him," he said. His voice was shaking. You wormed your way in when he was dying. I kept my voice low. I visited him. Every other weekend. 6 years. Where were you? Don't you dare, Dad started, but Mr. Jacobson cut in. Gentlemen. This meeting's over, Daniel. I'll need you to stay behind. We have executive paperwork to discuss. Dad stormed out. Eric followed. Mom hesitated at the door, glanced back at me. How could you? She whispered. Then she left too. Jacobson waited for the door to close. He pulled out another envelope. Frank asked me to give this to you, he said. After they left, my hands shook as I opened it. Grandpa's handwriting wobbled, but I could read it. Danny, if you're reading this, I'm gone. It also means your father reacted exactly how I knew he would. I'm sorry you have to deal with this. But you need to know why I did what I did. It's not about the money. It never was. It's about the truth finally coming out. There are things your father never told you. Things I should have told you years ago, but I was a coward. I let you grow up thinking you were the problem. You weren't. You never were. Check the safe deposit box at First National, Box 447. The keys with Jacobson. Everything you need is there. I'm sorry I waited so long. Sorry I let you suffer. But I'm not sorry I'm giving you this. You earned it, not because of what you did, but because of who you are. Love, Grandpa. Frankie just sat there holding the letter for 10 minutes after Jacobson left. The paper was soft at the edges, like Grandpa had folded and unfolded it 100 times before sealing it. Coffee stain in the corner. Probably had his reading glasses sitting on it while he wrote that. I should have felt vindicated. Or rich. Or at least relieved. Instead, I just felt empty. Whatever Grandpa was trying to tell me, whatever truth he'd buried, I knew it was going to hurt. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of silence from my family. No calls, no texts. I sent Mom a message on her birthday. She read it, didn't answer. I called Eric once. Straight to voicemail. Dad blocked my number. The day after the will reading, I went to the bank. Box 447 was small, nothing special. Inside, 3 things. A manila envelope, a VHS tape labeled February 2019, in Grandpa's shaky handwriting, and a USB drive. I opened the envelope first. Documents. Legal stuff, adoption records, medical files. A stack of photos. Dozens of strangers and one I recognized, me as a baby in a woman's arms. I'd never seen her before. The adoption papers were dated July 14, 1988. I was born April 3, 1988. 3 months old when Robert and Margaret Parker adopted me. But the papers said more. The biological mother's name, redacted, but you could still make it out under the marker. Sarah Mitchell. Grandpa's handwriting in the margin. She never wanted to give him up. They took him. I spent the next 3 months trying to piece it together. The USB had more photos, documents, emails between Dad and lawyers. A paper trail of manipulation, forgery, and lies going back 37 years. The VHS tape. That took some work. I had to dig up an old player at a pawn shop just to watch it. Dated February 15, 2019, 3 weeks before Grandpa changed his will for the last time. On the tape, Grandpa sat in his living room. Same chair where we used to watch football together. He looked tired, thinner, but his eyes were sharp. Danny, he said straight to the camera, if you're watching this, I'm gone and Robert is fighting the will. I knew he would. So I'm recording this because you need the truth. You need proof I was of sound mind when I tell you this. He paused, breathing heavy. You're not Robert's biological son. You're Sarah Mitchell's son. My daughter's son. Your real mother is my daughter from my first marriage. Robert is your uncle, not your father. The world tilted. Sarah was 22 when she got pregnant. The father was gone. She wanted to keep you, Danny. She wanted you so badly. But Robert, he was 40 and Margaret couldn't have kids. They tried for years. When Sarah came to me for help, Robert convinced me Sarah wasn't ready, that she was too young, too unstable. He said, they'll take care of you, raise you right. And God forgive me, I believed him. Grandpa's voice cracked. But Robert never loved you. He took you to hurt Sarah. To punish her for being my daughter from another marriage, the one who took my attention when he was growing up. He raised you like a burden because that's what you were to him. Proof I'd had another family before his mother. When Sarah wanted you back, when she got her life together and came for you, Robert made sure she could never have you. He had the adoption sealed. He threatened her. He destroyed her. The camera shook. Grandpa was crying. I've been living with my own cowardice for years now. I watched you grow up in that house, unloved. I watched Robert treat you like you were invisible. And I just let it happen because I was scared I'd lose my son. But Danny, I'm dying. I can't die without telling you the truth and giving you what's yours. It's not mine to keep. It was always meant for you. Sarah's inheritance, the house, the savings, all of it. I was just holding on to it for her, and now, it's yours. He leaned in closer. Robert won't let this go quietly. He'll claim you manipulated me. He'll do anything to get it back. But you play them this tape. Show them the documents. Tell them Frank Parker knew exactly what he was doing. The video ended. I watched it 17 times that first night. Then I cried, really cried for the first time since I was 8. Suddenly everything made sense. Every offhand insult, every time my mother stiffened when I tried to hug her. Every birthday my dad forgot. Every time he brushed off something I'd achieved. I wasn't his son, I was his nephew. Just a pawn in some ancient family feud. A constant reminder of the father he could never forgive for loving someone else. 2 weeks after I found the tape, Dad's lawyer sent over a stack of papers. They were contesting the will. Undue influence, mental incompetence, fraud, the works. They wanted everything, the house, the money, the investments. They even offered me $50,000 to just walk away and keep it quiet. I got a lawyer. Not Mr. Jacobson, he was too old for this kind of fight. I hired Sarah Rise, a bulldog in court. Dad's lawyer must have regretted the day he met her. She listened to my story, watched the tape, combed through every document. Then she grinned. They're going to lose, she told me. But it's going to get ugly. She was right. The deposition was 3 days of hell. Dad's lawyer, Martin Krause, $800 an hour, slick as oil, spent hours trying to make me out as some greedy vulture circling a dying man. He grilled me about every visit to Grandpa's house, every conversation, every time I'd been alone with him. How many times did you visit him that year before he died? Krause asked, pretending to care. 47 times, I said. I'd counted. I kept a log. And did you discuss his will during those visits? No, never. He mentioned once he'd updated it, but I told him it was his business, not mine. How convenient, Krause muttered, scribbling something down. Yet he left you everything. My lawyer objected. The deposition ended, but I knew what was coming next. Trial was set for October. Judge Richard Morrison presiding, the same guy who played golf with my dad every Saturday for 30 years. The same judge who showed up at Eric's wedding, at my mom's birthday, at family barbecues I'd never been invited to. My lawyer filed for recusal. Denied. Morrison wrote, a personal relationship does not constitute bias. Sure. The trial started on a Monday. It was cold, gray, rainy. Dad and Eric sat with Krause at the plaintiff's table. Mom was in the gallery dressed in black like she was at a funeral. Behind them were aunts, uncles, cousins, people I barely knew, all convinced I'd stolen what belonged to them. My side? Me, Sarah Rise, and one person in the gallery, an older woman I'd never met before. She introduced herself before things got started. I'm Janet, she said, shaking my hand. I was your grandfather's nurse for his last 3 months. He talked about you all the time. I wanted to be here. That nearly broke me. A stranger cared more than my own family. Judge Morrison called the court to order. Krause stood up, buttoned his jacket, and looked the jury dead in the eye. 8 strangers would decide if I was a manipulator or a victim. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, this is a story about greed. About a young man who saw an opportunity and took it. Frank Parker was a decorated veteran, a beloved father and grandfather. But in his final months he was sick and vulnerable, and the defendant, Daniel Parker, exploited that. Daniel spent years building trust, visiting regularly. And when Frank was dying, heavily medicated, Daniel convinced him to change his will. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each time Daniel got more control, more money, until Frank left him everything. The real Parker family, Frank's son Robert, his grandson Eric, they got scraps. Daniel walked away with millions. This isn't justice. This is theft. We're asking you to return Frank Parker's estate to his rightful heirs. He sat down. Every juror stared at me. I could feel every ounce of their judgment. Then Sarah Rise stood up. She didn't bother buttoning her jacket or pointing at anyone. She just talked, calm and steady. Members of the jury, you're about to hear a lot of words today. Manipulation. Greed. Theft. But here's what I want you to keep in mind through this whole trial. Who actually showed up. Not who said they did, not who wishes they had, but who was really there. She walked over to a big board with a timeline on it. For 6 years, from 2019 to 2025, Daniel Parker visited his grandfather 92 times. 92 trips. 3 hours each way. He paid for hospice care out of his own pocket. He held Frank's hand as he died. She paused, let that sink in. And in those 6 years, how many times did Robert Parker visit? 7. 7 times. Eric Parker 4 times. Margaret Parker just twice. Sarah paused, her voice steady. Frank Parker wasn't confused. No one manipulated him. Maybe for the first time in his life he saw clearly who loved him. And he made a choice. A choice he put in writing, explained in his own words and verified. We'll show you that he made it with a clear mind and a clear purpose. She sat down. I felt myself let out a shaky breath. Dad was the first witness. Kraus led him through years of memories, holidays, fishing, birthdays. I sat there and wondered if we'd even lived in the same house. I didn't remember all those fishing trips. I remembered Dad taking Eric out to fish while I stayed home mowing the lawn. Birthday celebrations? I remembered turning 16, Dad handing me car keys and then finding out the car was a loaner, one I'd have to give back for Eric's birthday the next year. When did you first notice your dad's attitude toward you change? Kraus asked. Dad's voice was careful, rehearsed. Around 2019. He started withdrawing. Got secretive. Danny was always visiting and Dad got agitated when I called. Did you confront Daniel? Kraus asked. I tried. He said he was just helping Dad with yard work and errands, but I could see what was happening. Dad was pulling away from the family and Danny was encouraging it. Lies, every word. Sarah Rise stood up for Kraus. She didn't even glance at her notes. Mr. Parker, you said you noticed changes in 2019. Which month? Dad hesitated. I'm not sure. Was it before or after February 15, 2019? I don't remember. Let me help. February 15, 2019, Frank Parker recorded a video explaining his will. Were you aware of this video? No. Did you know that in the video Frank said he changed his will because you lied to him for 37 years? Kraus leapt to his feet. Objection. Foundation. Sustained, the judge said, but I saw something flicker across Dad's face. Sarah smiled. I'll rephrase. Mr. Parker, how often did you visit your father in his last year? I visited regularly. How many times? Several. 7 times, Sarah said. In 12 months, compared to Daniel's 47 visits, would you call 7 visits regular? I had work obligations. You're semi-retired, right? You sold your business in 2018? His jaw clenched. Yes. So you had time. You just chose not to visit. Is that right? I visited when I could. Did you contribute to your father's hospice care? Silence. Mr. Parker, please answer. No, Dad said. Daniel insisted on handling it. Daniel paid $47,000 for 3 months of hospice care. You paid nothing. Is that correct? Yes. No further questions. Dad stepped down, face red. Mom was up next. She cried through all of it, talking about loving Frank, how he was like a second father, all the Sunday visits, holiday dinners, their close bond. I might have believed her if I hadn't been there, living through every excuse she made when Grandpa invited us over. We're busy, Frank, maybe next time? Next time never happened unless Grandpa was handing out Christmas checks. Sarah's cross was quick. Mrs. Parker, when's Frank Parker's birthday? Mom blinked. November 3rd, Sarah said. Did you go to his 80th birthday? I don't remember. Daniel threw the party at Frank's favorite restaurant. He invited you. You RSVP'd, yes. But you didn't show. Does that help your memory? I must have had something come up. Or you just didn't care enough to remember, Sarah said, voice soft. No further questions. Eric was the worst. My brother, the golden child, got up and painted me as some calculating sociopath who isolated Grandpa on purpose. Danny was always jealous, he said. Jealous of my relationship with Dad, with Mom. When Grandpa started getting sick, Danny saw his chance. He made Grandpa think we didn't care, told him we were too busy, scheduled his visits when he knew we couldn't go. He turned Grandpa against us. It was a masterful lie. Almost believable if not for one thing. Sarah Rise pulled out the phone records. Mr. Parker, you said Daniel scheduled visits when you couldn't make it, right? Yes. Here are Frank Parker's phone records from 2023 and 2024. He called you 37 times. You picked up 4. He called your parents 52 times. They answered 9. Daniel didn't have to turn Frank against you. You did that all on your own by never picking up the phone. Eric just sat there, no comeback. The trial dragged on for 3 days. Witnesses talked about Grandpa's mental state. The hospice nurse, Janet, said he was sharp as a tack right up to the end. His doctors backed her up. No meds that could mess with his judgment. Mr. Jacobson said Frank was more decisive and clear-headed in that last year than he'd been in decades. Every bit of evidence said the same thing. Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing and he meant it. On the fourth day, Krause finished his case. The jury looked dead on their feet. Judge Morrison looked annoyed as hell, kept glancing at his watch like he had somewhere better to be, probably the golf course. Then Sarah Rice stood up. Your Honor, the defense calls Daniel Parker to the stand. I walked up, put my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. My legs shook but my voice didn't. Sarah started with my childhood. Not the version Krause liked, where I was the scheming son from day one. The real story. The one where I spent most of my childhood wondering what I'd done wrong. Daniel, describe a typical birthday in the Parker house. For Eric, there'd be parties. 10, 15 kids from school. Mom would bake whatever cake he wanted. Dad would take him shopping, let him pick out his own present. For me, card at breakfast, maybe a bookstore gift certificate. Did that bother you? At first. Then I just accepted it. That's how it was. When did you start visiting Frank regularly? 2019. After my grandmother died. Grandpa seemed lonely and my weekends were free. I'd drive up, we'd watch football, play cards. It was nice. He talked to me like I mattered. Did he ever mention his will? Once. He said he'd updated it. I told him I didn't want to know. He laughed and said, "You're going to be surprised, Danny." I had no idea what he meant. When did you find out? At the will reading. I was as shocked as everyone else. Sarah pulled out the letters. Your Honor, Defense Exhibit A, 3 letters Frank Parker wrote to Daniel between 2020 and 2024. She handed me the first one. Daniel, please read the date and the first lines. September 14, 2020. Danny, watched the Bears game by myself today. Called your dad. No answer. Called Eric. Voicemail. You're the only one who shows up. Want you to know I notice. Second letter. March 8, 2023. Danny turned 82 today. You brought a cake. Your dad called. Said he'd visit next weekend. He didn't? You're the only family I have left. Third letter. January 29, 2025. Danny, I'm dying. The doctors say 3 months, maybe less. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid I wasted my life enabling people who never loved me the way you do. I'm fixing my mistakes. You'll understand soon. I had to stop. My throat was tight. Sarah let the room go silent for a bit. Then she asked, Daniel, did you manipulate Frank Parker? No. Did you isolate him from his family? No. They did that themselves. Did you know about the will before he died? I knew he'd updated it. I didn't know what was in it. Why do you think he left you his estate? I looked at the jury. Because I loved him and he knew it. Krause's cross-examination was brutal. He tried to twist every visit into a scheme, every conversation into a plot, every kind moment into a ploy. But I've been questioned about my motives for 37 years. I was used to it. Mr. Parker, Krause said, sharp as a knife, isn't it true you stood to gain millions from Frank's death? I didn't know that until after he died. But you hoped, didn't you? I hoped he'd get better. I prayed for more time with him. Money never crossed my mind. How convenient. It's the truth. Krause paced. You say your childhood was difficult, that you felt left out. Isn't it possible you're exaggerating for sympathy? Possible? Sure. True. No. You claim your brother was favored. But you both had the same schools, same homes, same chances. I said, different experiences. Because you chose to feel excluded? No. Because I was excluded. That's not the same. Krause frowned. He was losing ground. No further questions. Sarah Hendricks stood for redirect. Daniel, one last question. If Frank Parker could testify today, what would he say? I thought about all those afternoons in his living room. Cards on the table, football on mute, just talking about life. The last time I saw him conscious, his hand in mine, his voice weak but clear. You were always the strong one, Danny. He'd say I was telling the truth, I said, and that he was sorry it took him so long to fix his mistakes. No more questions. I stepped down. Sarah turned to the judge. Your Honor, I have one more piece of evidence. Video testimony from Frank Parker. Recorded February 15, 2019, 3 weeks before his final will revision. Krause jumped up. Objection. This is the first we're hearing of any video. It was listed in Discovery as Defense Exhibit B, Sarah said, calm as ever. Your office signed the receipt. Judge Morrison glanced at Krause, who looked over at his associate, white as a sheet. I didn't review. That's your problem, counsel. Judge Morrison said. Overruled. Go ahead. Sarah wheeled in an old TV and a VCR. The room went quiet. The video started and Grandpa's face filled the screen. He looked tired but determined. For 10 minutes he laid it all out. The truth about Sarah, the adoption, Dad's lies, watching me grow up without love and doing nothing about it. He talked about his regret, his shame, and how he wanted to make things right before he died. Why he wrote his will the way he did. Why he recorded this at all. I'm making this video, Grandpa said, staring right into the camera, because I know Robert will contest my will. He'll say Danny manipulated me. He'll say I was confused, sick, not in my right mind. But I am in my right mind. I'm clearer now than I've been in years. And I want everyone to know, Danny didn't take anything from me. I'm giving it to him because he earned it. Not by manipulation but with love. Real, patient, unconditional love. Something Robert never learned to give. The video ended. Silence. Mom was crying, real tears this time, tears she couldn't hide. Eric just stared at the blank screen, like he couldn't make sense of what he'd seen. And Dad, my father who'd raised me out of spite for his own father's love for someone else. He just sat there, frozen, face the color of old newspaper. Judge Morrison cleared his throat. Does the plaintiff wish to present any rebuttal evidence? Kraus didn't stand. Didn't say a word. Just shook his head. Very well, Judge Morrison said and looked at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard all the evidence. But before we move to closing arguments, there's something I need to say. He turned to Dad. Mr. Parker, I've known you 30 years. I thought I knew the kind of man you were. But after 4 days of watching you lie, watching you twist the facts, watching you try to steal from your own son, I realized I didn't know you at all. Dad's lawyer started to object, but Judge Morrison cut him off with a raised hand. I'm not finished. You brought this case claiming undue influence. That Daniel manipulated a sick man. But the only manipulation I've seen in this courtroom came from you. You pushed your father to give up his daughter's child. You made that child believe he didn't deserve love. And now you're trying to manipulate this court and take what Frank clearly, explicitly, and with a sound mind wanted Daniel to have. Morrison looked over at me. Mr. Parker, Daniel, I apologize. I should have recused myself the moment I saw your father's name on this case. I let my own history cloud my judgment. Not anymore. He turned back to the jury. I'll give you instructions and you'll deliberate as you must. But I'll tell you now, if you find for the plaintiff, I'll seriously question your ability to weigh evidence. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. They found in my favor on every count. The will stood. The estate was mine. Dad and his lawyer had to pay court costs. As the jury filed out and the courtroom emptied, Dad walked past me. He stopped for just a second. You're not my son, he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. I know, I said. I never was. He left. Mom followed him. Eric stayed by the door lingering. Finally he came over. Danny, he said, I didn't know about the adoption. About any of it. Would it have changed anything? I thought about it. Probably not, he admitted. But for what it's worth, I'm sorry. It wasn't worth much, but it was something. Sarah packed up her briefcase. Congratulations, she said. You won. Yeah, I said, but it didn't feel like victory. I just felt empty. That night I went to Grandpa's house, my house now. The key was still under the fake rock by the front steps. I let myself in, turned on the lights. Everything was just as he'd left it. His reading glasses on the coffee table. Crossword puzzle half finished. The remote on the arm of his chair, the same chair where I'd sat next to him so many times watching games, eating sandwiches, just existing in the kind of quiet that comes from being wanted. I sat down in his chair, picked up the remote and cried. When the estate settled, I got the house. Part of my inheritance. I gave them 60 days to move out. They sent lawyers after me, angry letters and threats. I ignored it all. Eric reached out once, asked if we could talk. So we met at a coffee shop downtown. He seemed different, quieter, maybe older. I've been thinking about everything, he said. How we grew up. How Mom and Dad treated me. I always knew, I guess, but I told myself it wasn't that bad. That you were just being sensitive. And now? I asked. Now I realize they used me as a weapon against you. Every time they praised me, they were putting you down. Every time they picked me, they were rejecting you. And I let it happen because it felt good to be chosen. Yeah, I said. It did. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not standing up for you. For believing their side. For testifying against you in court. I sipped my coffee, studied this man who'd been my brother for 37 years but never really my family. I appreciate the apology, I said. But I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He nodded. I understand. We haven't spoken since. Maybe we will someday. Maybe not. It doesn't bother me anymore. Mom called once, 6 months after the trial. She was crying. Danny, we're losing the house. The bank is foreclosing. Can you help us? No, I said. But we're family. You're not my family. Sarah Mitchell is my mother. Frank Parker was my grandfather. You were the people who took me away from them and then spent 37 years making me pay for it. We raised you. You tolerated me, I said. There's a difference. Please, Danny, your father is sick. We have medical bills. You should have thought about that before you spent $400,000 trying to steal my inheritance. Goodbye, Margaret. I hung up. Blocked her number. Felt nothing. Dad died 2 years later. Heart attack. Eric called to tell me, asked if I'd come to the funeral. I said no. He didn't argue. I sent flowers. The card just said, for appearances, Daniel. Later I heard Mom sold the house and moved in with Eric and his family. They're in Indiana now, small town. Dad's pension barely covers the bills. No more country club, no more golf with Judge Morrison, no more expensive cars. All gone. They built their lives on borrowed money and a son they kept around to use. I don't think about them much now. When I do, I just feel sad. Sad they got a child who wanted so badly to be loved and chose cruelty instead. That's on them, not me. I'm 39 now. 2 years since the trial. I'm still at Thornton and Associates, but I cut back my hours. Partner track doesn't matter much when you've got $4.7 million in the bank. Sundays I spend with Sarah, my mom. We eat dinner, watch movies, talk about everything and nothing. She's teaching me to knit. I'm terrible, but she doesn't care. I bought a house in Lincoln Park. 3 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a real kitchen. Sarah stayed with me for a month when I moved in, helped decorate, made it feel like home. Her room is always ready. I started dating someone. Her name is Claire. Photographer, does weddings mostly. We met at a gallery opening. She made me laugh, which I hadn't done much before. 4th date, I told her about my family. Everything, adoption, trial, the parents who weren't parents. She just listened, held my hand, said, "You deserved better." "I'm getting better now," I told her. Last month we went to Grandpa's grave together. First time since the funeral. The headstone's simple. Frank James Parker, 1943 to 2025. Beloved father and grandfather. I added a second line, and great father to Sarah's son. I put flowers on the grave. Told him about Sarah, about Claire, about the life I'm building. "You were right," I told the stone. "I was always the strong one, but you made me that way. Thank you." Claire stood with me, quiet and steady. On the drive home she said, "Tell me something about him. Something that made him great." I thought about it. So many moments, afternoons, conversations, little acts of kindness that piled up into love. But one memory stuck. I was 16. Failed my driver's test for the 3rd time. Dad called me an idiot. Mom said I was wasting everyone's time. Eric, who'd passed on his first try, just laughed. I locked myself in my room, crying, feeling like a failure. Grandpa showed up an hour later. Knocked on my door. "Danny, let's go for a drive." We drove for hours out of the city into farm country. He didn't mention the test. Didn't ask why I'd failed. He just drove. Windows down, radio humming low. He finally pulled into this little diner off the highway. We sat down, ordered pie. Out of nowhere, he turns to me and says, "You know what I learned in Korea, Danny?" I just shrugged. "What?" He takes a bite, chews, then says, "There's 2 kinds of people in this world. People who give up when things get hard and people who keep trying. You're the try again kind. I knew it when you were 7 and spent 2 months learning how to tie your shoes because you refused to wear Velcro like the other kids. You wouldn't give up then. Don't start now." I stared at my fork. "What if I never pass?" I asked. He grinned, wiped his mouth and said, "Then you'll take the bus like a respectable human being. But you will pass. 4th time's the charm." And he was right. I passed on my 4th try. That's what made him great, I told Claire later. He saw me. Really saw me. When everyone else looked at me, they saw a burden, an obligation, a mistake. He looked at me and saw someone worth fighting for. Claire squeezed my hand. "I see that too," she said. "Maybe that's what this whole story is about. Being seen, being valued, being loved, not because of what you bring but for who you are." I spent 37 years in a family that never really saw me. Then I found the people who did. Grandpa, Sarah, Claire. They're my family now. The one I chose, the one that chose me right back. I still have the letters Grandpa wrote me. They're in my desk drawer. On rough days I pull them out and read them. They remind me I mattered to someone. That I wasn't crazy for feeling left out. That real love exists somewhere in this world. Last week a letter showed up from Eric. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter. 7 handwritten pages. He wrote about therapy, about working through his own issues with mom and dad, about realizing how much he'd let me suffer, about wanting to do better. At the end he wrote, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but if you ever want to try, I'm here." I haven't responded yet. Maybe I will, maybe not. But I'm thinking about it because Grandpa taught me something else. People can change. It's rare and it's hard, but it happens. Sometimes if they're really trying, they deserve a chance. Sarah asked about the letter yesterday over Sunday dinner at her place. Spaghetti and meatballs, her specialty. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. Part of me wants to respond. Part of me thinks it's too late. She reached across the table. It's never too late for honesty. But it's also okay to protect yourself. You've spent enough of your life getting hurt by them. I asked, "What would Grandpa do?" She smiled. "He'd tell you to follow your gut. And then he'd remind you that forgiveness is for you, not for them. If you forgive Eric, do it because it heals you, not because he deserves it." She's right. She usually is. That's something else I've learned. Mothers know things. Real mothers, the ones who love you not out of obligation but because they choose to. Sarah chose to love me before I was even born. She fought for me. She never stopped hoping. And when I finally found her, she welcomed me home, no questions asked. That's family. Not the people who share your DNA but the ones who show up. The ones who stay. The ones who see you at your worst and love you anyway. Sometimes I think about Dad, the man who raised me as punishment for his father's sins. I wonder if he ever regretted it. If he ever lay awake wishing he could have loved the son he chose to hate. If he died feeling even a shred of remorse. Probably not. People like Dad don't do remorse. They do justification. They convince themselves they're right, that everyone else is wrong, that they're the victim even when they're the villain. But that's not my problem anymore. I spent 37 years trying to earn his love, trying to be good enough, successful enough, perfect enough. It was never going to work because the problem wasn't me. It was him. He was broken in ways I couldn't fix. Ways Grandpa couldn't fix. Ways no one could fix. So I stopped trying. I stopped performing. I stopped hoping. And finally I found peace. That's what I'd tell anyone who grew up like me, the ones who feel like outsiders in their own homes. The ones who do everything right and still get treated like they're wrong. The ones who watch their siblings get the love they'll never have, and wonder what they did to deserve exile. I'd tell them, it's not you. It never was. The day you accept that, the day you stop trying to earn what should have been given freely, is the day you start healing. I'm healed now. Mostly. There are still moments. I see a father and son laughing together and feel that old ache. Or someone mentions family holidays and I have to swallow the bitterness. But those moments are fewer now. Softer. Less sharp. Because now I have new memories. Better ones. Sunday dinners with Sarah. Date nights with Claire. Quiet afternoons at Grandpa's grave, telling him about my life. These new memories, they're starting to edge out the old ones. Slowly, quietly, but it's happening. Last night, Claire and I sat down to watch some forgettable comedy. There's this classic scene. The main guy finally makes things right with his estranged dad. Tears, hugs, everyone grinning through their snot. Claire looks over at me and says, "You think that'll ever be you and your dad?" "My dad's dead," I said. She just shook her head. "No, I meant Eric." For a second I just stared at the TV, not seeing it. My mind went straight to Eric's letter, still gathering dust on my desk. That apology he gave me in that coffee shop 2 years back. So awkward I can barely think about it. All those years of being the backup, the extra, the kid nobody picked first. I told Claire the truth, I don't know. Part of me wants that big happy ending, you know? But another part thinks some things are just too broken. She asked, "What's your gut say?" I said I needed more time. "Then take it," she told me. "There's no deadline on forgiveness." And she's right. So that's what I'm doing, taking my time, living my own life, building a family that actually feels like mine. Maybe someday I'll be ready to answer Eric's letter. Maybe there'll be tears and hugs. Or maybe not. Some relationships, honestly, belong in the past. Like old photos you find in a drawer, you might look at them now and then but you don't need to hang them on the wall anymore. Either way I'll be fine. Because now I finally get what Grandpa was trying to tell me in those old videos and letters, all those afternoons at his place. I was never the problem. Never too much, never not enough, never broken. Just me. And for the people who mattered, the ones who really saw me, that was always enough. So here I am. Daniel James Parker, 39, investment analyst. Son of Sarah Mitchell, grandson of Frank Parker, boyfriend to Claire. Not the son Robert wanted. Not the nephew he tried to punish. Just a man who made it through a childhood that tried to wreck him and came out stronger, smarter, and, finally, loved. Sometimes I think back to that courtroom 2 years ago. Judge Morrison, February 2019. I wasn't just laying out facts. I was laying out my whole self. The unwanted son. The cast-off nephew. The guy who paid everyone's bills and got nothing back. And I said, I matter. My story matters. You're going to hear it. And they did. The judge heard me. The jury heard me. The whole damn room heard me. Not because I forced them, but because once the truth's out there, nobody can stop it. I still hear Grandpa's last words to me, "You were always the strong one, Danny. Don't let them take that from you." He wasn't talking about money or the house. He meant my story. My truth. My life. I held on to that. I fought for it. I stood in that courtroom and told the whole messy thing. And I won, not just the case but myself. I got myself back. That's what I'd say to anyone out there who gets it, who's lived it or is still fighting through it. You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. You're not the problem. And when you're ready, you'll speak your truth. That's what sets you free. It set me free. Now I'm free. Free from a family that never really wanted me, from their rules, from chasing love I was never going to get. And in that freedom I found something better. Real family. Chosen family. People who show up because they want to, not because they have to. That's everything. Thanks for walking this road with me. Before you go, I've got 2 more stories for you. Both from guys who figured out that family isn't always about blood, it's about who stands by you when it matters. Pick whichever speaks to you. And if you want to be part of a community that knows what it feels like to be on the outside looking in, hit that notification bell. Until tomorrow, just remember, your story matters even if someone tried to wipe it away.